Hey guys, I'm so excited because today is Elias's first birthday. He made it to one. A video that a lot of people mentioned that they might like to see is a labor and delivery story video. So I'm basically going to give you guys the full story on just how everything happened as far as the day of delivery and all of the details. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we're just going to jump right in. Just to give you guys a little bit of context, throughout my entire pregnancy, I was sick every single day for 9 months. Pregnancy is hard. But I also worked all the way up until the last day of my pregnancy. So at 9 months pregnant, I actually flew to Dallas for a competition. So Elias's due date was actually March 12th, and I had a feeling he was going to come on time. I was hoping that he would come on time because the weekend after his birthday, I had to coach a competition. So I wanted him to come before that so that I could make the competition. And I was just dead set, he's going to come on time. I didn't want him to come any later than the competition because then I'd have to be pregnant for like 2 extra weeks, and I wasn't trying to do that. And on that Friday, I started to feel contractions. I went to sleep. I let Ainsley know that, I'm having contractions, and they weren't really strong, so I just kind of toughed it out. But it felt like a little bit of cramping, so I just had the idea that labor was coming. And so on Saturday I woke up and I called my doctor early in the morning, and she just said to keep a watch on him. We had practice. I actually own an all-star cheer program, for those who don't know. So my teams had practice that Saturday, and I said, I'm going to practice. Ainsley's sister, or my sister-in-law, she was actually staying with us at the time because she was to be my doula. She is getting her doula certification, and I told her, I was like, well, you can test it out with me. So she was like, are you really gonna go to practice? And I was like, yeah, I feel fine. I also knew that I wanted to labor at home because I just heard that it's a lot more comfortable whenever you are at home versus in the hospital for hours on end. So I had that set in my mind. So I went to practice. I started coaching, still having just a little bit of pain every now and again. And then I'd say by the end of the practice, I was really in pain. So I knew for sure that I was in labor. And I was actually interviewed at the time on WFMY News 2. Not because I was pregnant, but the guy, he was wanting to interview me anyway. And I remember I was just kind of, I was pregnant and hormonal, and I was like, I'm not trying to be on TV. And so I didn't really reply. And then he just shows up at the gym, and I'm like, I guess I'm doing an interview now. Sorry, contraction.
In labor and doing an interview with us, contractions and all.
They are 4 minutes apart.
All this after coaching a 4-hour cheerleading practice. This is the dedication of Hallie Morgan, a coach at Cheer Elite All-Stars in Greensboro. She is dedicated to cheerleading and dedicated to keeping her girls safe. But for someone who is literally having a baby right now, it's nerve-wracking.
After the interview, practice was about over, and I believe my cousin, everybody just kept showing up. Like, all my family just kept randomly showing up. They're like, go to the hospital, do this, do that. And I'm like, I already knew I wanted to labor at home. And so, my sister-in-law, she shows up at the gym with my whole bag packed, like I'm gonna go to the hospital right then. And I knew I didn't want to, but I also knew it was time that this baby was coming. And so I start researching ways to, I guess, speed up the labor process. I don't know what I was thinking. And I stumbled upon the Midwives Brew, which is like apricot juice, some type of tea. I'll attach the link to this video if anybody wants to know. But we went to the store, and I remember being in the grocery store, like getting all of the items for this Midwives Brew. And everybody kept asking me, they were like, you know, when are you due? When are you due? And I'm like, I'm in labor right now. And everybody was just kind of freaking out at the store. And so I got all of the items and went to the house, and Ainsley was there. You know, me and Isabel, his sister, my sister-in-law, we're sitting there, we're making the midwife's brew, and I didn't really read the full description on how to properly use it, but I chugged this midwife's brew down, and in hindsight, that was mistake number one. Bella goes upstairs to, you know, put on like a hot bath for me. I go upstairs, you know, everything's, I still feel the pain, but it's not bad. I feel the water and it's way too hot, so I just sit on the toilet and wait for the water to cool down. And then it just hit me, like I could not sit down. It was just so painful. I feel like that I attribute it to the midwife's brew, but I mean, maybe it was just a coincidence, but I don't think it was. I was in so much pain. I could not sit down on the toilet. I tried to get into the bathtub, could not sit in the bathtub. And then at that point, I think my mom was calling and she was like, you know, when are you going to go to the hospital? I said, no, I'm going to labor at home as long as I can. I'm just going to push through the pain. I sent Ainsley to Emma Keys to go get me a burger because I really wanted a burger. So he was driving to the store. And this was like 11 o'clock at night, mind you. And then it had to have been like 7 minutes later. Ainsley comes back with the burger. I'm like, I don't want that. I call my mom back and I'm like, I gotta go to the hospital. It was so painful all of a sudden. I was like, this is real. Okay, this is real. So we pack our bags and we're getting into the car. And I remember pulling out. Bella was driving her car in front of us and she just stops like in the parking lot. She told me that she was closing her trunk or something like that, but I just remember screaming at her, and that's just not my personality, but I was screaming at her. I was like, you need to go, what are you stopping for? I was banging on the dashboard. And then, you know, we're flying down to the hospital. I feel like I was on the scene of a movie, screaming at Ainsley, like, you need to go. And then we get to the hospital and he pulls into the wrong parking lot. We were those parents who practiced where to drive, where exactly we were going in. So we drove to the hospital ahead of time to make sure we had that right. And yet, we still managed to go into the wrong entrance. So at this point, I was like crying. I was crying. I was in pain. I kept telling myself the whole time that whenever I got there, I was only going to be like 1 to 2 centimeters dilated, because I heard so many horror stories about people that keep going to the hospital and they send them home and back and forth. So I told myself I was 1 to 2 centimeters so that I wouldn't be disappointed. So then we get checked in and the nurse checks me and I am 4 centimeters dilated. So I was so excited. I was like, yes. They checked me back into my room and all I know is that my doctor was not there. Not only was she not there, but they also were not able to get in touch with her. So they kept calling, I kept asking, where's the doctor? We don't know. So I'm freaking out. So at any rate, we start off, they have to get the IV in my arm. And this is where it all starts to go downhill. So the nurse literally put the IV in. She said, oh, that's not a good vein. And then she did it again. Not a good vein. Then she comes back again. And mind you, this is all while I'm having contractions. So I'm just like, I look at her for on the third time and I'm like, how many times are you going to stick me with this thing? And she just kind of made this face and then she does it again. And finally she got it in, which I learned later that, they're supposed to get like an assistant or something after, I guess, the second one. I don't know. But she was basically not following protocol. I had 3 or 4 nurses that came in and check to see how dilated I was. And at this point, they said I was 5 centimeters dilated, then 6 centimeters. And then things started to get strange. It's like they kept looking at the monitor and the screen, and they kept like leaving the room to go get somebody else, sending someone else back in, leaving the room. And I'm like, where is my doctor? And all of a sudden, the pain became excruciating. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. It's like a pain that is beyond the point of crying. It's beyond the point of like, oh, I need everybody. No, it to me was just like, I was blacking out. And I forgot to mention too that, my goal going in was to have a natural birth. And so, I'm not on any medication, not even Tylenol, hadn't taken anything. And I got to the point of this blackout pain. Nothing made it better. Like sitting down, I tried sitting down. I tried getting in different positions. I heard the whole thing about the ball in the shower, and, I probably hit like 18 different, areas of the room, and nothing helps. It's just a pain that is just like, you just have to go through it. Or that's how it was for me anyway. And then, my sister-in-law, she kept trying to like offer me stuff. Like I felt so bad, like crackers and water and, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want incense? Do you want music? I was like, no. I was in so much pain. Finally, she offered me some coconut water, and that was the yes. And then finally my doctor gets there, and I'm just like, oh, it felt like the heavens opened up, and I was able to, I had the mindset that, it was like, okay, let's do this thing. Like she was here, we were good. 4 different nurses had checked me, and they said I was at 6 centimeters before I got to that point of unbearable pain. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I know I'm at least at like 8, rubbing 9, just because of how much the pain increased. And she walks in, and when I tell you, she was like angry with the nurses. You could tell. I don't know if she just had a bad relationship with them. I don't know if she was mad because of like they weren't doing things properly. But she walked in and just was really like frazzled. And she was a West Indian doctor who, she always kind of had her stuff together. I've seen her in action before. I've seen her deliver babies before. And so, to see her in that state, like I just knew something was wrong. She checked the screen, and then she checked me, and she says, you're 5 centimeters. And at that point, it was just like the most horrifying thing to hear, because, you were pushing through, the nurses told you 4 centimeters and 5, then 6, then 7, and it's like, how did we go from 7 to 5? The way that I would, or like what I would compare it to is, someone says that you're getting ready to run a mile, and give it 100%, do your best, you push through on that mile, and you know how you feel at the end, like when you give it everything you have, like you're just done. And then someone all of a sudden says, oh, actually you have to run 2 miles. And it was just like, it was mentally like, it just mentally shattered me. And at that point I was thinking like, I kind of want this epidural. I didn't say it yet, but that's really how I was feeling. She told me that, and I just cried. And then, she checked the screen, and she was concerned are not lasting like a normal length of time. They were lasting 6 minutes whenever they're really supposed to last like, I think, a minute. And every single one was lasting 6 minutes. So it was almost unheard of. And then every single time that I was contracting, the baby's heart rate was dropping. And so that made her really nervous. You know, you could just see on the screen his heart rate was dropping. At this point, I didn't care. I mean, and then like the level of pain I was at, I didn't care how they got this baby out. I just knew, I was like, get it out. And that's really how I felt. She comes back in and she tells me that there's a chance that I might have to have an emergency C-section, which I really didn't want a C-section, but again, at this point, I just didn't care. And she said, you know, we're pretty much going to have to give you the epidural because she said we're pretty much going to have to give you the epidural because I don't know, she said something to the effect of once we take you back or once we put you under, we're not going to be able to administer the epidural. After that point, she turns me onto my side and she checks me again and she says the baby is in the wrong position. And so I'm on my side and she's checking me, and then all of a sudden she goes, it's time to push. And I'm thinking, like, he was just checking me. How did we go from you're checking me and I was at a 5 to we need to push? And that's where, honestly, like, I love my doctor, and I think that, you know, normally, like, I would trust her discretion over anyone else's, but this is the one case where I do feel like the nurses were right. I mean, I just feel like there's no way that, you know, 3 and 4 nurses can come in and check me and they all agree that I'm at one place, and then you just walk in and, you know, I'm at 5 centimeters, and then minutes later we're going to push. So then it's time to push, and one thing that I remember is that I wanted to have a mirror, because I've heard like some women have a mirror there so you can actually watch the birth. And I was like, bring the mirror over. And they brought it there, and like I look up and I'm like, take it away. And then like, you know, a couple of seconds later I'm like, bring the mirror, because I wanted to see it, but it's just like I couldn't handle it. I've seen live births and I've never had a problem with them, but it's something about like on your own body, for me, it just didn't work. And then they had me grab onto a towel and like pull as I was pushing. And they're like, push. And then it started to hurt. And then I like, you know, I've heard women refer to, like, I guess it's the crown of the head is like the ring of fire, and that's like where it like really like burns or whatever, or like really hurts really bad. And so, you know, I don't know if I was at that part or if I was, you know, at the baby's shoulders. I don't know where I was, but it felt like, oh, this is the part where where it's like really intense. I could feel that. And I'm like getting ready to push, and I look up and the baby is on the other side of the room. And I was like, they unfortunately couldn't hand him right to me because, I guess because of the situation where, his heart rate was dropping, they had to check him out. They hand the baby to me, and, I was told of like this magical moment where, a mom is holding her first baby and she looks down and everything's at peace and like the world just kind of, everything feels right. I remember looking down and I was like, this is not my baby. This baby is white. And I know that, when people of color have children, they, start off a little lighter and then they, get darker as time goes on. But Elias was white. And then I remember like, holding the baby and, she was like still stitching me up, and all I could focus on was like that. I just didn't have that immediate moment. It was kind of weird. I don't think I developed like that I'm a mom now moment. I think it was like 2 days later. I remember 2 days later I like broke down crying. It felt like mini PTSD. But I broke down crying. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is my baby. Like that didn't hit me until later. Elias was born on Sunday, March 11th at 10:14 a.m. 6 pounds, 14 ounces, and 21 inches long. So he was a teeny tiny baby, just tall and skinny. I'll never forget his first full day on the planet. You know, we woke up that morning and it was snowing. And it was just like such a peace. It was like after all of that stress, that tension, you know, the pain, it was just like after all of that, it was just like a peaceful snow. And it really felt like after everything, it was a reassurance that everything's gonna be okay. So that, you know, is a nice memory to have. The night that we left the hospital, we went home, and then I went to practice. I went to coach a practice. Like that same night, I remember having my hospital tag on, and then that weekend, you know, we packed up and we drove to Myrtle Beach for a competition, and I just knew I was gonna coach this competition, and I did. Which in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. But one thing that was really special, I mean, it was just like the memories that we made. You know, that was really special. We were able to take Elias onto the beach for the first time, which is like my favorite place to be. You know, so all in all, the pregnancy, the labor and delivery, I mean, it was rough. Like, it was challenging. But I mean, like any other mom would say, it's just so worth it in the end. You know, it's amazing to be able to look down at a child and you see, you know, not only yourself in that child, but the person you love, and it's like, you know, you created this being. It's magical. I mean, it's just so nice to reflect on all of the memories of that day and just how far we've come since then. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Throw out some suggestions for some things that you might want to see or some questions that you might have. All right, I'll see you guys next time.